Would you like to know why things are starting to get really weird with Congress and UFOs? For a while now, I've been sitting on private UFO documents from Skinwalker Ranch that were written by a CIA doctor. You're the first to see these documents publicly, and the implications of what's disclosed within are staggering. The document, titled Skinwalker Ranch Interference Syndrome Medical Study, reveals medical, historical, and genetic data around paranormal and UFO phenomena that has never been discussed publicly before. Now, I received this from somebody that is associated with Skinwalker Ranch. I haven't spoken about this before because I like to independently validate my data before I talk about it, and I did a tremendous amount of research into the claims in this document. There's a lot that checks out, and a lot that I have no way to check, but there's plenty here that's worth looking at. The presentation opens by introducing a new term, interference syndrome, and wait until you find out what that is. It says Area 2016 Ranch Correlates. I do not know what the acronym AREA stands for. The slide continues that experiencers get injured, sometimes. We have been exploring why and how for over a decade, in the past 5 years with some success. This briefing discusses some cases. It concentrates on ranch experiences, management, employees, and visitors, and we will be recommending some actions, and that this is a confusing and unpleasant topic. The next slide serves as an illustration of interference syndrome. It's labeled as an index case, and in medical terminology, an index case is the first documented patient in a disease epidemic, a patient zero. In this case, patient zero appears to have been an aerospace executive and not somebody from the ranch. This person had a TS-SCI security designation, which means top secret, sensitive, compartmented information, and they worked with the Department of Energy in advanced propulsion, UAV and multiple threats, that's unmanned aerial vehicles. Now this is very interesting when you consider the rumors that the Department of Energy plays a large part in the UFO phenomenon and engineering and flying these craft. And that this person worked with unmanned aerial vehicles, and as I've told you before, many of the UFOs you're going to be seeing are sophisticated drones. Now, unfortunately for whoever this is, they had their brain turned into Swiss cheese by an exposure to whatever energy that they were working with. And the slide states that this damage has similarities to many ranch exposures and encounters. The next slide shows a comparison, a Skinwalker Ranch employee. And this person supposedly had experiences with orbs, confrontations, and unidentified aerial phenomena. But you'll also notice something very unfortunate, that this person appears to have a profound amount of brain damage. The next slide gets even more disturbing. It continues on with another ranch employee. This time the brain scan shows severe atrophy, shrinkage, of a brain structure known as the caudate putamen. This person supposedly had years of what we can presume are paranormal experiences on the ranch. It shows that their caudate is 3.24 centimeters cubed versus 6.33 centimeters cubed for somebody who's new to the ranch. So their caudate has atrophied to half the size. This will become very important as we talk about savants and psychic experience later on. Even this much data is already starting to show a disturbing trend. It begs the question, if the people who are on the ranch, who are reporting paranormal experiences, also have brain damage, are the paranormal experiences causing the brain damage, or is the brain damage causing the paranormal experiences? And what is damaging their brain? And why does it look the same as the guy from the Department of Energy who was playing with advanced propulsion systems? This section of the presentation wraps up by giving a little historical context into their program, and it's very eye-opening. A little history. How did we get here? About a decade ago, most of us in our confederation, already having worked by then together on these matters for over 30 years, started considering data on interference. Now, I don't know who this presentation was being given to specifically, but this confederation seems to have overlap with Jacques Vallée's Invisible College. People like Eric Davis, Hal Puthoff, Bob Bigelow, etc., the group that he's run with for years. And we can talk more about this group in a future video, but for now, we continue on. A pilot study of 3 years, from 2008 to 2010, resourced by Bob Bigelow and another colleague, based Emergent Ranch Injuries Comprehended, a UAP review of medical data of 300 cases since 1897. Now these are two huge bombs that just dropped. The first is that this document alleges that Bob Bigelow ran a pilot study from 2008 to 2010 into the many negative health effects around people who get exposed to these experiences. The document also alleges that there is data going back to 1897 about similar types of damage. This would seem to be referring to the 1897 Aurora, Texas UFO crash. And indeed, when I checked into the lore around the supposed 1897 event, I found that there were reports of people coming down with mystery illnesses that may fit into this dataset. The slide continues that Bob Bigelow next suggested in 2011 and resourced a suggestion that brain scans might be useful to look at biomarkers in ranch persons, 18 to date. The results of these two pilot studies led us to resource a major and formal study which began in 2012. And once again, the document is alleging that they knew that there would be biomarkers, i.e. brain damage and health effects, all the way back in 2011, and they still continued to test on the people at the ranch.
It just sounds like slavery with extra steps.
Ooh la la, someone's gonna get laid in college.
So gang, it seems that we have a mystery. We have a secret cabal of people doing secretive human testing for well over a decade and studying a phenomenon for over 30 years with a dataset that goes back over 100 years. But the next part of this document is where things really start to get interesting and relevant to what you're seeing right now. Remember that term interference syndrome? Well, now we're going to start to get into it, and you'll start to see why Congress is freaking the hell out. We see that this outlines the approach that they're going to be using for diagnosing people with interference syndrome. We see under Project Part 1 for calendar year 2012 through 2015, the hypotheses are that there will be a clinically and statistically significant overrepresentation of ICD-10 code interference syndrome diagnoses in interference syndrome experiencer cases compared to the control of non-experiencer cases. So what's an ICD-10 code? It's a classification system, a medical code for diagnoses and for insurance purposes. Interference syndrome placement of a case will satisfy all 4 clinical system detailed criteria in pathophysiology of immunology, neurology, dermatology, and internal medicine. They're basically saying that injuries from anomalous phenomena can overlap in various areas of medicine and injure various portions of the body all at once. The cases that they are going to take seriously for defining interference syndrome were case entry definition for IS cases that had near-field anomalous craft, orbs, or entities within 100 meters lasting minutes, 2 or more waking state witnesses, and that were deemed credible by the investigation team. And that the person would be excluded if they had not had anomalous life events obtained during detailed medical, psychological, or psychiatric evaluations by at least 2 physicians, including the principal investigator. So my interpretation of this is that they are establishing medical and insurance codes for both medical and psychiatric purposes for people who have been injured by anomalous events, field effects, UFOs, paranormal events, and that have had pre-existing life experiences with the paranormal and unexplained. Why would they be doing this if they weren't expecting more in the near future? Is this why Congress is freaking out and trying to get legislation put in place real quick to protect people that have been involved with these programs? Are they expecting an epidemic of experiencers? This video is already getting a little too long, but you can see things starting to heat up. We'll go deep into the ICD-10 codes in the next video, as well as the rest of the bombshell information in this document.